I'm Seth for Privacy, and thanks so much for joining us on the journey to sovereignty. We're beyond thrilled to have a place for us to chat about all things sovereignty, the why and how we're reclaiming your digital sovereignty, and to give you all a chance to chime in, ask questions, and join the conversation. Journey to Sovereignty is brought to you by Foundation, where we build Bitcoin-centric tools that empower you to reclaim your digital sovereignty. This includes our Passport hardware wallet and Envoy mobile app. So, as always, I'm joined by Bitcoin Q&A, Head of Customer Experience here at Foundation, and our CEO and co-founder, Zach Herbert. How's it going, guys?
Doing well. Yeah, nice to be back after a slightly extended hiatus due to the Miami conference. So, hope you guys have got your feet firmly back on planet Earth after the madness that ensued over there. And yeah, looking forward to diving in.
Yeah, I'm doing great as well. I think this is my first journey to sovereignty in possibly a couple months, which is kind of embarrassing. So excited to be back on.
Yeah, we finally roped you back in. So I think it has been at least a couple months since we do these every other week. It adds up quickly if you miss. So glad to have you back and jumping in and chatting through all this fun stuff. So obviously we had the amazing timing of Ledger's Recover service announcement last week. While we already had a price drop planned, we had Envoy as a mobile wallet launch planned, and we had the Bitcoin Miami conference going on last week. So a crazy amount of things happening. And we'll unpack a little bit of the Ledger Recover stuff first, just because that kind of lays the groundwork for a lot of the rush to free and open source software and hardware that we've seen. So a really quick overview for those who haven't kept up with the Ledger news. So Ledger announced a subscription service, $10 a month. You give over all of your KYC info, like your ID, you do a video selfie of you. You use this to create an account for this new service. And what happens is when you confirm this new service on your Ledger Nano X, it actually encrypts the seed on your Ledger Nano X and uploads it in 3 shards to different service providers run by Ledger. So obviously, the quick thing to get out of the way is that all of this is closed source, so we have no way to verify how any of this works. But essentially, this is a service that's supposed to be helping people self-custody their funds. Unfortunately, the downside is not only is it closed source, so we don't know exactly how it works, but it requires giving over all of your identifying information and linking that directly to your Ledger account and Ledger usage. But also it means that now your seed phrase is not just on your hardware wallet on your Ledger Nano X, but it's actually stored by 3 custodians, one of whom is Ledger, and the decryption key for the way that those shards are encrypted is also held by Ledger from everything that we can tell. So there are a ton of new attack angles. Funds could be stolen. Funds could be taken, seized by governments by simply sending a subpoena to Ledger. There are a ton of new attack angles here. So that was the spark for a lot of the craziness that happened last week, but it also just happened to coincide with a lot of things that we had going on. So maybe real quickly, kind of what's y'all's biggest takeaway over the last week in the space? And then we can dive a little bit more into the Ledger Recover drama.
Yeah, I can kick it off and I think it was a fantastic summary, by the way, Seth. There's a couple of things here that I think there's been a really wide awakening about. The first and foremost is that, because of the nature of the closed source software and the hardware that Ledger operates with, this feature could have been included into their devices for a number of years, and we would have no idea about that. And that's one of the reasons that we will always stay true to our free and open source ethos and in everything that we do, but in both hardware and software, is so that anybody that has the know-how to do so can come and audit our code. They can audit our hardware devices to be sure that there's nothing untoward going on, especially something as insidious as sending your private key off the device, which is, kind of the whole point of a hardware wallet, is to keep your keys safe and secure. They're a single purpose device that is designed to not be able to talk to any other devices and to keep your all important private keys secure, which makes this whole business decision from them all the more puzzling. So I think there's been a really wide awakening as to the importance of open source software, because people are going, well, hang on a minute, if they've just pushed this release, then how do we know it's not been there in the first place? Or how do we know that there isn't other things going on that's running on this device that we also have no idea about? So it appears that there's been a very quick loss of trust and faith in them because of this decision, which I think is a personally good thing. And, we had record week at Foundation, and I know a lot of our competitors in the hardware wallet market also had their record weeks as well. So clearly the people are voting with their keys, so to speak, and they're moving to more open source alternatives where, they're able to audit the code, or at least be safe in the knowledge that even if they don't have the ability to audit the code, that it ultimately only takes one person to audit some open source code and raise a red flag for thousands or hundreds of thousands of people to learn that there's something insidious going on. Which is, again, just to reiterate myself, this is why we stay true to open source, so that we do everything out in the open. There's no closed source and there's no black boxes, that which is the way it should be when we're interacting with private key material.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is about values and ethos. One of the most surprising things to me about this Ledger Recover service was the idea of linking your seed words to your KYC identity, requiring that you go through a full KYC verification check and upload your identifying documents to Ledger and the third party custodians, and that there is a direct link between your seed words and your KYC identity. I always thought one of the beautiful things about the Bitcoin space is that your Bitcoin identity and your private keys maybe can even help replace your fiat identity. Whether that's I think there's so many ways that you could do that. Maybe through paynims, for example, is a cool way to receive funds in a more privacy preserving way. But the idea that, like, if I want my money back, I have to now upload like a photo of my identifying or identity docs and my birthday and my social security number and all that kind of stuff, and share that with multiple parties, and that's how I get my money back. And then also the idea that a government could subpoena the custodians with my name, and they could potentially even take custody of my money if it's done across two of the three custodians. That's just completely insane to me. I think that just goes against all the principles that I have, all the principles that I think the Bitcoin space has. And so that to me was, I think, the most shocking part about this service, because everyone knows Ledger's closed source. Everyone knows it's kind of just like a black box. It's a trust me, kind of security model, but such a heavy emphasis on the KYC side of things just shows that those principles of freedom, sovereignty, privacy, they don't really apply at like a corporate values or ethos perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing for me. Is it's like I understand the use of identity as a way to unlock funds, but it brings so many painful headaches and so many risks when you're combining that with theoretically money that gives you self-sovereignty and that gives you freedom. Now, not only are you trusting your money with custodians, this isn't really like, I think the pushing of this as a tool for self-custody is false, because what this really means is that you now have secondary custodians for your funds that you're trusting. You also hold the keys on your ledger that you have in your closet or in your drawer or wherever, but you are really trusting a second custodian. It's not a self-custody tool or something that they're pushing to help with self-custody across the globe. It really it does highlight that vision and that ethos difference, in that it's kind of the mass adoption at all costs problem that I think we see a lot in the cryptocurrency space and somewhat in the Bitcoin space, of just sacrificing on the things that are necessary for this freedom movement to really work and for these tools to really give us freedom, and sacrificing that for this aim of mass adoption, when there are actually ways that we can improve things for mass adoption. But if we do that in the easiest way and in the pre-existing way that's already been a part of kind of the fiat legacy system, we introduce a ton of problems back into things.
Yeah, and like, I get it. I am not a huge fan of seed words personally, because I think so many people make mistakes when backing them up. I think seed words are probably the number one thing that's most responsible for hardware wallet users to essentially lose their money. Right? You get tricked into typing your seed words into some kind of web browser or compromised software, and then all your money is gone. So like, for someone like Ledger, I get the appeal of trying to do something that's an alternate to seed words in the Bitcoin space. We've seen, companies like Casa propose and implement and ship different types of models, like a seedless 2 of 3 multisig. I think is a pretty interesting model that's gotten some traction. I think there's other types of models you can do. I just think that this specific model with the reliance on your, KYC identity is kind of crazy. And Seth, as you're saying, I don't think it's self-custody. It's like a shared custody with custodians. I don't know what's more risky. I mean, maybe you're better off having your funds on an exchange, or I don't know how much of a difference there is to having your funds on a few exchanges in different geographies. But I do think if they wanted to, they probably could have architected a service that did not rely on custodians. I think there's potential for things like social recovery, which has been talked about in the space for many years, and little has been done from any company or project. I think in terms of implementing that, I think there's to me, I don't think the sin was necessarily getting the seed off the device and splitting it up. I think that Trezor has shipped like Shamir models already, where you can Shamir your seed on into like a 2 of 3 or whatever you want on the Trezor device, and export it and share it with others if you want to. I mean, there's people who will encrypt their seeds and upload them and kind of trust that encryption. So I don't think the big sin here is necessarily getting the seed off the device. I think it's more about the reliance on these custodians and KYC, as opposed to doing something more privacy preserving, more decentralized.
Yeah, I think the difficult bit with the situation that Ledger has painted themselves in by supporting so many different coins is that you rightly mentioned services like Casa and Unchained, where they operate on a Bitcoin standard, and you can do such things like shared multisig, where you've got a helping hand, but you're still the sole custodian, and you can build some really great UX around that. The issue with supporting hundreds of different coins is that there's no such thing as multi-sig on some of these coins. So you're then painted down into the route of seed splitting, which is clearly what they've done. And again, as you correctly said, Zach, the implementation here is definitely not a favorable one on behalf of their users. And the other thing also is that it's worth remembering the demographic of people that use a ledger. Generally speaking, they're probably the first, they're definitely the most well-known, and I'm sure they've probably sold the most devices, probably more so than all of the other competitors put together. But so they have to kind of make things, turnkey or one-click button to kind of make their general demographic be able to leverage such a tool, and clearly they've made some quite significant trade-offs to try and achieve that in terms of ultimately taking custody away from the user and requesting egregious amounts of KYC as well. So not a decision that I'm sure all three of us will agree with, but I can kind of see why they've taken that approach with where they're at in the market.
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest risks to Bitcoin, though, in the long term. I think something that we agonize over, internally within Foundation, right, is the design UX versus privacy and sovereignty. I think it's always a tension. And I think that it's very easy if you're willing to compromise on the sovereignty, and especially if you're willing to compromise on the privacy side, it makes it much easier to implement services like this that are more user friendly, right? Where you really can get set up quickly in a seedless way and back up your private keys and not need to write anything down and so on. I mean, I understand why Ledger has taken the step, but that's why I think it's so important that as a company in the space that you've clear values and a clear mission statement, and that when you're making product decisions, you go back to your values and say, does this product decision align with our values? And if we were trying to build a service like this internally, I mean, the immediate answer would be no when it comes to KYC and custodians and so on. And so I think we do have to start asking the question of, when you're doing business with companies in the space, do they share my values or not? And are they good for, Bitcoin and Bitcoin adoption in the long term? I mean, if you had a billion users on board with such a service, you would be able to have their names, their identity documents, their date of births, their the amount of funds that they have stored on their devices. You'd have massive information about cryptocurrency users all over the world, and you'd be able to potentially restrict access to their funds or even seize their funds in certain scenarios if you're able to go after multiple custodians in different jurisdictions with subpoenas. So that's crazy. and I think we need to talk more about that. We need to write more about that and think more about that, because too much of this now is under the guise of self-custody, when I don't think it's self-custody if there's other parties that could take your funds. Or even I think self-custody is very much at risk if you end up on a list somewhere with your name and your address and the amount of Bitcoin you hold, which unfortunately is the case with Ledger.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I mean, I was personally surprised by the pushback to the Ledger Recover situation. Just because most of this has already been known about Ledger. I mean, everyone already knew that they're a crypto company, not a Bitcoin company, that their values don't really align with Bitcoin and Bitcoiners, and that they're closed source. But I'm glad to see that this really woke a lot of people up to the dangers that are inherent in this, and the specific dangers in Ledger Recover as a service, like we've covered pretty at length here. But I was very much surprised to see the backlash being as strong as it was. Kind of how did y'all gauge the response that we saw in the Bitcoin community around this?
Yeah, I thought it was great to see. I mean, we're all guilty of having somewhat of an echo chamber in Twitter, and certainly the echo chamber that I subscribed to was almost unanimously against this, with the exception of maybe one or two, minority voices. But clearly, the level of pushback that was heard was definitely heard by the people that matter, and i.e. Ledger, because just late last week they decided to briefly pause the rollout of this. So clearly they're at least having a single second thought about this, to think, hang on a minute, if there's this many people kind of shouting about this and there's been this much pushback, maybe we do need to reconsider, and maybe we do need to think if we can do this in a more, sovereign way, or a more privacy preserving way. But yeah, it remains to be seen how long that pause is for. If it's just another marketing ploy to kind of let the heat die down before they continue with the rollout. Again, nobody knows. We're just going to have to wait and see how that unfolds. But yeah, I personally was very glad to see the level of pushback, and it was vehemently sort of pushback against, and yeah, love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, me too, of course. I hope what comes out of this is that people have a generally better understanding of why open source is important. And I think that Ledger's unwillingness to articulate exactly how the service works has really woken people up to the importance of knowing what's happening inside your hardware wallet, or even your software wallet, right? And understanding why open source software and hardware is so important when you're storing your Bitcoin. So I think Ledger has done the open source movement a big favor. I hope it's not a short-term kind of thing. I hope that people will be more interested in the topic, and that companies like us can do a better job with education.
I think there's a lot of a kind of barrier of entry to the concept of open source that's been broken down by this, which has been awesome to see. I mean, I was really surprised, because it really did get out of just kind of the Bitcoiner echo chamber. I mean, the thread that I put together that somehow ended up kind of being like the thread on Ledger Recover, it got 1 million views. It was way outside of the norm of anything that I've seen in my kind of echo chamber. So I think it was good to see that it did get out of that, and it sparked in people's minds this concept of open source. What is it? Why does it matter? And it did something that I think is very hard to do otherwise, which is just get people thinking about it. And the education around it, and the importance of it, and the full kind of scope of why open source matters, and why the movement as a whole matters, will take time to set in for these people. But I think for a lot of people, this is the first time they've ever had to think about open source versus closed source. And so it's an awesome real awakening, kind of like, thankfully, before people got burned by it in the Ledger scenario, and that Ledger Recover wasn't live, and in theory, nothing bad has been happening to people's seed phrases yet. So I think it was kind of a best case scenario where people got scared before something actually happened and had to come face to face with the reality of open source versus closed source, which has been pretty awesome. And we got to have lots of really good conversations in Miami with people about the importance of open source, and people who for the first time were like, oh, like what is this? I'm hearing this discussion about like open source versus closed source and why that matters. And a lot of people just hadn't at all been exposed to it before. So that's an awesome piece of this. And I'm glad it's taken off, is that people are actually thinking about that now. Any last thoughts about the Ledger Recover stuff before we move on here?
I think we covered all the base points. I know we've got a lot of foundation related news to cover off. So let's move on, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned at the top, we already had a crazy week planned for the week of the Bitcoin conference in Miami, no matter what. So the Ledger Recover stuff really just amplified that. But first, let's chat a bit about Passport. One of the biggest things that we announced during the Bitcoin conference was the price drop from $259 to $199, and that was a really big deal for us, as we're not normally, we don't do discounts, we don't normally do like Black Friday sales or anything. We just kind of offer the best price possible, but this was obviously a big price drop. So do you want to cue us in a little bit, Zach, on why we took that jump down from $259 to $199, and kind of what you see as the advantages there moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the short of it is that as we ramp up Passport manufacturing, which we're doing now, we want to be able to pass our cost savings, on to our customers in our community. And so $199 is, I think, the price that, well, firstly, I think it's an amazing price point. I think it turns Passport into an almost no-brainer purchase, but we're able to achieve that because we're, ramping up production. Additionally, we made a couple changes on the back end. We did have like a referral program. And so some people, when you bought Passport, you were getting $10 off, and you were, receiving, the person who referred you was receiving $10. So we had what I think was kind of like an unfair scenario where on some Passport units, we were giving essentially $20 off, and then on some we weren't. And that means that some people were paying full price. Some people, if you hunted around for a code or if someone referred you, were getting the discount. And we've decided to make the official company policy, no discounts, right? So Passport is never going to go on sale. You're never going to have to wait for a specific holiday. Like the US over the weekend was flooded with, Memorial Day weekend sales. So there's never going to be a holiday sale or anything like that on Passport. If you're buying Passport, you're going to get the best price, which is $199. Additionally, I'm really excited that Passport is no longer the most expensive or more expensive option amongst the Bitcoin hardware wallets. A lot of people don't realize, and we're going to do a better job of explaining to people that we actually include in the box with Passport an industrial grade micro SD card, USB-C and Lightning adapters for the micro SD card. We include a USB-C cable for charging, and the device comes with an integrated user replaceable lithium ion rechargeable battery. So when you do the math and compare Passport to some of the competition for air gap devices, I think we're at just a really fantastic price point, and we include complimentary shipping within the USA. So I'm really excited about the price. Obviously, that plus the Ledger news really resonated with customers because we got sold out very fast within like 2 days, and we thought we had inventory to last us 1 to 2 months. So it was a really amazing week. About a week and a half ago.
Yeah, that aspect of everything you need being included in the box as well has been one that, like you said, I don't think we've done a good job telling people that. And a lot of other options that you buy out there, you need other things to be able to use it properly or to get the full functionality. And that's one of the things you just get out of the box with Passport, which makes sense. We don't sell the extra accessories. We're not trying to price gouge on those or anything like that. We want you to buy Passport and have everything you need for simple self-custody right there. So I was super glad to see that. I mean, it does make it a lot easier of a recommendation for me for kind of new Bitcoiners, where it's 200 versus 260 is a little bit of a big difference depending on how much Bitcoin you have. So it's really nice to be able to recommend that, and it be not kind of the fancy, super expensive option, but you can kind of have your cake and eat it too now. So I was glad to have that price drop. And along with the price drop, we also released a big new update for Passport. The actual version number is 2.1, but we pushed a lot of new features in that. And the biggest one of those new features was something we called the Key Manager extension. And it unlocked a whole new world of child seeds, Noster keys, leveraged the existing encrypted microSD backups. But what are some of the use cases and important things to keep in mind when we talk about this new Key Manager extension? Because there's really a lot to cover. We've written a blog post about it, but I'd love to chat about it here, because I think a lot of people are a little bit confused or don't understand kind of what the use cases are that this enables.
Yeah, so speaking personally, this has been my most long-awaited Passport feature. So I'm super excited for this one to finally land. So it almost became a little bit of a meme amongst our more hardcore or dedicated user base of when BIP85, which is another terminology for what we've dubbed the Key Manager. Although we've added some extra pieces and UI around it, so we feel like it's much more than just BIP85. So to kind of start from the beginning, when you set up a Passport, you will allow the device to generate yourself a private key, which is represented to you in some seed words, which you can optionally save on a microSD card in an encrypted fashion. That's kind of your master wallet. It's what you would use to sign transactions, and that's kind of the default way that all of our users would use that device. With the addition of the Key Manager now, we allow our users to generate multiple seeds, or what we call child seeds, that are derived from their master seed. So this allows them to populate as many different wallets as they want to, and I'll cover off some of the common use cases in a second. And this is all encompassed in a great UI that our design team have done a fantastic job on, and it's called the Key Manager. So it's nestled within our extensions menu. So it's just a toggle. You can turn it on or off so that you can interact with it whenever you like. And the Key Manager extension allows for the creation and export of, as I mentioned, BIP85 defined 12 or 24 word child seeds, as well as deriving some Noster keys as well, which is, for those that don't know, Noster is a decentralized means of communication, the most common among which at the moment is sort of a Twitter replacement that's been very popular and gaining increasing popularity amongst Bitcoiners as well. The beauty of the Key Manager function on your Passport is that all of these keys are generated in what we call a deterministic fashion from that master seed that you set up when you set up the device. And what that means is that the deterministic nature of that means that you'll get the same output every time you do the same action, essentially. And I'll explain why that's important in a second. But ultimately, the Key Manager extension means that you can have a single backup. Again, that could be your 24 seed words, or additionally, it could be your encrypted backup that's on the microSD card, which forms, again, part of the onboarding session. So you can have that single backup and have generated from that potentially, up to 20 different wallets if you wanted to, all represented by their own unique child seeds in terms of 12 or 24 words. So why the hell might you want to do this? I can hear a few people saying. So some of the common use cases is that you could generate a child seed to populate a mobile wallet. So let's say one of the, a user downloaded Blue Wallet or Envoy, our app, or Samurai Wallet, and they didn't want to trust that app to generate the seed for them. They could use our Key Manager to generate a 12 or 24 word seed, derived again deterministically from their Passport master seed. And then populate whichever mobile app it is that they're using, so that they can, number one, not have to trust the random number generator on their phone or wherever the wallet is running. And number two is that, and here's the real kicker, is that if they then lose access to that wallet, they lock themselves out of it and they don't have a backup, all they need to do is go back to Passport, choose that key from the list, and they can rederive that key and spit out the 12 or 24 words again, such that no funds are ever lost. Now, you could do that for Blue Wallet, Envoy, Nunchuk, and you name it, any single wallet. It doesn't even have to be your own wallet. You could, if you're trying to orange pill friends and family, and you know for a fact that because they're so new, they're probably not going to heed your warnings around, the importance of these 12 or 24 words and that you must back them up. Now, if they completely ignore all of your warnings, all you need to do, if they lose their wallet and they don't have a backup, again, is go back to your passport, click on their key number. And once again, you can label these keys. So if you generated your mom a key, you can call it mom's mobile wallet key. Click export, and you can give her seed words back again, and then reiterate the importance of backing them up this time, such that again no funds are ever lost. And you can do that for any number of different friends and family. Obviously, that would be a trusted relationship, and we're not recommending that you go handing these keys out willy-nilly to people on the street. This is still a trusted relationship, and you could rederive their key at any time. And again, you can do the same with your Nostr private keys, which is a slightly more advanced topic at the moment, given how new the ecosystem is. But to recap and to sum that all up, one master backup, potentially hundreds of different wallets and private keys, all securely backed up with a single seed phrase and or an encrypted backup that's stored securely on a micro SD card.
Very, very well put. It's a lot to digest at first glance, but I think you covered it. You covered it really well there, and just that concept of being able to have all of your wallets. And I mean, for those of us who have been in Bitcoin for a while, the wallets that you use add up, and oftentimes you want to be trying out new wallets and testing out different things, and actually securely backing up every one of the seed phrases that you use in those becomes a real nightmare. So being able to just have the one backup, have the one seed phrase. I think especially with encrypted micro SD backups, because the one kind of caveat is you can always recover funds, even if you don't save the specific index of each key, because you can just try different indexes to get back different seeds. But with the standard seed phrase backups, you would need to then just go through the different indexes of 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever, all the keys that you've created, and rediscover all those. It's deterministic, so you can always rediscover the same seeds, but it can be a little bit problematic in figuring out which one was which again. But the beautiful thing with encrypted micro SD backups is once you have that encrypted micro SD backup, you store that securely, you store the 20-digit PIN code securely, and you can handle the encrypted micro SD backup a lot more freely because it is encrypted. It's not just a bare seed phrase. When you restore that, you get every key that you've ever created back, with the names, with the right index. Everything is back exactly how you had it, which is that combination is crazy, crazy powerful. And for me, I think the two biggest use cases are using now my single passport backup for my mixing wallet and Sparrow wallet. So I do all of my Samurai wallet mixing actually in Sparrow wallet on desktop. So now I can use a passport backed up seed phrase for that hot wallet, which really simplifies the backups there because I don't need to worry about backing that one separately. I can then mix directly to Passport, just like I've always been able to do in Sparrow. And then for my parents' Bitcoin, I can now create a seed phrase and help them to secure those. Like you said, it's a trusted relationship, but I already have that trusted relationship for my parents where I help them to secure it. But now, again, it's one less secret that I have to back up, which it's one of those things where there's so much peace of mind that comes with not having another secret that needs to be stored securely. Because do you really want to store all of your seed phrases in the same place? Do you want to store all of them the same way? Do you want to stamp them on steel? It gets really costly and cumbersome to store all of those things. So it's an awesome combo of not only all your mobile wallets on the go, securely backed up with Passport, but also you really embracing the Uncle Jim model where you can help out those people who trust you, but who need some help when they're getting started with their journey. And hopefully they'll evolve long-term to be able to use their own seed phrase that they don't have to give you and help you back up. But it's that initial step where that kind of like social recovery is immensely valuable. And it's something that I will definitely use. And then I'll recommend others to use where those relationships are already trusted. Because it really does help simplify that onboarding and give some more peace of mind to people who are new to Bitcoin.
Yeah, most people listening to this, by the very nature that they're on Bitcoin Twitter, listening to a Bitcoin Twitter Spaces, are going to be the quote unquote Uncle Jim for their family. And I feel like with this feature, we've really kind of brought Uncle Jimming into the 21st century. So rather than having a notepad in your drawer with mom's seed and 24 words written down, and then on the next page you've got your brother's name and then 24 seed words, and you're hoping that doesn't get lost or damaged or anything like that. Um, like you correctly said, Seth, now all you need is a single encrypted micro SD card. So you need to physically store that SD card and then store the 20-digit backup code, somewhere else, somewhere in a different location. Could be in a password manager, could be, wherever you see fit. That's a secure location. And with those two pieces of information, you could back up potentially, hundreds of different sets of keys. So yeah, really brings it into the 21st century and really makes that UX around it just so much more simple. The other bit that I failed to mention around when you do use the key manager and you're generating these keys for the various different purposes around there's multiple different export formats as well. Obviously, the most obvious one will be, Passport will display 12 or 24 words on screen, and you can manually type those in or write them down, however you want to, import them into whichever wallet you're using, depending on the purpose. The other two, we've also got two seed QR export options, which is a standard of encoding your seed words into a QR code format. There's actually two different ways you can do it. One's called compact seed QR, called so because it's in a compact format, and then the other format is just called seed QR. Again, I think that's the original, and is slightly larger in size. The standard was created by the seed signer team, I believe. So obviously, you can now use Passport to generate child seeds and then import them into a seed signer. I believe Jade Wallet also supports this standard, as well as Sparrow Wallet as well. So if you or any of your friends and family are looking to use those wallets, then Passport can generate keys for those and export them in a QR code format in a couple of seconds. So again, really lowers the barrier to be able to export those seed words in a safe and secure manner and not have to kind of scribble down 24 words, which can be quite time consuming, as I'm sure everybody listening to this can appreciate. And the final export option, should I say, is obviously a micro SD card. So you can export the seed words in plain text onto an SD card and then pass them across to, let's say, your laptop if you're going to import those into a desktop piece of software. So yeah, we've kind of got all of the export options covered, such that you're ready to optimize for whichever experience that you want to get those seed words across from Passport to wherever the destination wallet is.
And one thing that we didn't touch on either, that's another additional option that Matt, one of our firmware devs, mentioned on Twitter, is because of passphrases and the way that they interact with Key Manager being derived from your seed itself. If you leverage passphrases, not only can you then do essentially infinite keys, because with each passphrase you get 20 more keys that you can generate and store, but you can also do trustless setups for friends and family. So the way that it looks is when, let's say, my dad wanted to store his Bitcoin, but he doesn't trust me to keep the seed phrase and not steal his funds. The way that you can do that with Key Manager on Passport is that turn on Passport, you enter your PIN, and then you go out and enter a passphrase in on the furthest right screen on Passport. When you enter that in, you get a whole new Key Manager extension with no keys generated. And you can generate keys. They all get backed up the same way, but they're only accessible when you enter that passphrase. So if my dad stores his passphrase securely, puts it in like maybe a password manager like Bitwarden or something like that, as long as he has that passphrase, he can always recover his seed from me via my Passport once he enters the passphrase. Or obviously he could give me that passphrase in an emergency so that I could enter it and get him the seed phrase. But it allows him to store his funds with my Passport backup without actually trusting me, because I have no way to recover those funds once the device is turned off, because the passphrase is cleared immediately. So it's another kind of more advanced way to use the Key Manager extension, but I think a pretty valuable one, because it opens up a trustless backup scenario. So I'm glad that Matt mentioned that, because that's a kind of a key way that it can be used in addition to the kind of the default there.
Yeah, very good call. The other thing that I mentioned earlier about the deterministic nature of how these child seeds are derived in a repeatable fashion time after time from your master password seed, and again, as you just mentioned, Seth, your passphrase if you use one. The flip side to that, if you try and go the other way, so let's say you've got a child seed that you imported to Blue Wallet, and then that child seed somehow becomes compromised. Somebody steals your phone or reads the seed words over your shoulder or finds the manual backup that you made. The one-way function doesn't go back the other way. So the child seed being compromised does not pose any risk to the master passports on the seed on your passport, and it also doesn't pose any risk to any other child seeds that you have generated for any other different purposes as well. So once it's generated, you can look at it as its own unique BIP39 seed that has no ties to any of the other seeds that are generated in the same fashion.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I did forget that as a very, very key detail. It's something that we mentioned in our blog post, but we hadn't mentioned here. And I think it's especially useful to know when you're doing kind of the Uncle Jim setup, where you're letting people keep their seed phrases in your key manager extension, because maybe you can't trust your grandma not to enter her seed phrase into Google or something. You don't have to worry about her doing that, exposing any of your funds. Like you said, there is no cryptographic way to reverse engineer your master seed from that. So it's a good protection, especially in that instance when someone who maybe won't be the best with keeping that seed phrase secret and secure has a seed phrase that's been generated. You don't have to worry about that linking back in any way to your master seed, being linked on chain in any way to your transactions. There's no link between those two, which is a very important aspect of that. One of the awesome things of BIP39 and the way that it's laid out.
Yeah, I think just to sign the whole key manager piece off, if any of the concepts or any of the things that we just talked about for the last sort of 15 minutes on this topic isn't quite hitting home for you, then last week we released a video on our YouTube channel and also on our Bitcoin TV that walks you through, how to activate the key manager and how to generate the different types of keys and then populate those into different wallets via manually entering the seed words or via scanning a QR code. The example that we used was exporting a seed via Compact QR over across to Spiral Wallet as well. So if you're anything like me and you're a visual learner and you kind of have to see things happening in real time to kind of grok how they work, then feel free to go and check out our YouTube. You can see that all of that happening live.
Moving on to what may be considered the main event. I don't know. There's so many big things that have happened over the past couple of weeks. But a really big move for our company was that we jumped kind of with both feet into the software industry, in that we launched Envoy as a full mobile wallet this week on the App Store and Play Store, which previously it's been a standalone watch-only wallet for Passport and essentially a companion app for Passport. But we've really made a huge shift and published it as a full mobile wallet this week. So before we get too much into the nitty-gritty details of the how our approach is different from other mobile wallets in the space, I'd love to just kind of hear from both of you what your thoughts are around why we wanted to push out Envoy as a mobile wallet and kind of branch out of just the cold storage space that we've been in since the company was launched.
Yeah, I'm super excited that Envoy is now a standalone software wallet, and yeah, I can definitely talk a little bit about the motivation, at least from my perspective, as to why it's so important. The first is that I think most software wallets are a little too complicated for completely new users to Bitcoin that are trying out self-custody for the first time. Obviously, we think Passport as a hardware wallet offers a fantastic user experience, but for many people, it can be quite intimidating to take the first step to self-custody. And I think the first step often is trying out a hot wallet, right? An internet connected wallet. And I think the easiest way to do that is on mobile. And there's actually a lot of friction when you try to set up a mobile wallet. You're greeted with your usually 12 seed words on mobile to write down. There's usually terminology you don't necessarily understand. It can be difficult to make it easy to enable privacy features like Tor for like an average user or a new user by default. So we want to just make an ultra simplistic Zen-like Bitcoin mobile wallet experience that is accessible to everyone, especially people that have their Bitcoin on Coinbase or other exchanges and have been afraid to take that first step towards self-custody. So I think that's a big one from my perspective. Another one was also just allowing people to try out something from Foundation before buying a Passport. I think it can be difficult to say, go buy something for $200 on our website without any exposure to anything we make as a company. So it's great with Envoy. You could just download it from the App Store, and within a couple minutes you're up and running, and you can actually test out what a product made by Foundation is like. And then thirdly, I think it gives us a really fantastic, almost like a foundation, right, to launch new products and features. Right now, Envoy, in addition to being a mobile companion app for Passport, is now a standalone Bitcoin software wallet. But that's all it is. And we have a lot of exciting features on the roadmap to bring to Envoy. And I think that, this is just like the very first step for us on the software wallet side. And will be the first of many steps over the next several months and beyond.
Yeah, I think an especially interesting one as well. I'm thrilled because it does make it a lot easier to recommend how people get started with Bitcoin. There have been other good kind of Bitcoin beginner-friendly wallets, but I think they have been lacking a bit, especially in the onboarding process, as you mentioned, the user experience, and just the ability for us to take our design-first approach to building a software wallet is really, really fun. And it's been awesome to see really every member of the team spending tons and tons of time looking through this, diving into the exact flows, exactly how every piece of it works. And we've all had input on how we can make this both as simple as possible, as powerful as possible behind the scenes without having to complicate things for users, and really give people, I think, the best kind of first user experience in Bitcoin. And I think an especially interesting one for us is we have been this cold storage only company. And so obviously that's usually more of an advanced step. Like once you first get started in Bitcoin, you don't usually start by buying a hardware wallet. That's usually not your first step. So it allows us to bring our principles, to bring the ethos that we have as a company, to bring our privacy first perspective, to bring all of these things to bear earlier in people's Bitcoin journey and help us to be able to help Bitcoiners earlier on, which is a really, really big thing. And a lot of the pain points in Bitcoin we can really get ahead of them. We can break them down earlier if we can kind of insert good user experience, good UI, and good privacy practices early on in their experience. So I'm really excited for that. And I think just also from the concept of like getting keys off exchanges, Envoy enables that in a new way where maybe you're not comfortable, you have funds on an exchange, you're pretty advanced in Bitcoin, but you haven't ever done self-custody. I think it can be scary for a lot of people to immediately withdraw from an exchange, withdraw all their Bitcoin to their cold storage before they're really comfortable with cold storage, before they're really comfortable with actually moving Bitcoin around themselves, before they're really comfortable with self-custody. So a good in-between is using Envoy as kind of the way that you test withdrawals, see how they work, see how long it takes, test sending transactions back and forth, where testnet is a really good fit for that with Envoy on mobile, and Passport can also do testnet mode with Envoy. So you can send transactions back and forth between yourself, between Passport and Envoy. There's a lot of things that are unlocked now for actually learning how to use Bitcoin that we couldn't do previously, which I'm really excited about. I'm really excited to get more keys off an exchange and remove yet another barrier of entry to people, which has been a fun thing to dive in. So how did we really separate ourselves from the other mobile wallets? So we touched on a little bit of the why, but a big change that we implemented with Envoy is this thing that we're calling magic backups. Do you want to kind of walk us through what separates Envoy from the rest of the pack and how magic backups work, Q&A?
Yeah, definitely. So the TLDR here, the summary is that you can go from zero to your own self-custody wallet that is backed up securely in 4 taps after you've installed the application. Literally just 4 taps of your screen, you'll have your own Bitcoin wallet and it'll be securely backed up to your personal cloud, which is a massive step change compared to some of the more common experiences where, like Zach mentioned earlier, where you're forced to go through lots of different settings and to manually write down your seed words. And contrary to Zach, I am a seed word maximalist. However, there is a time and a place for them. And, if you're trying to Uncle Jim somebody who, has just heard about Bitcoin, they're not exactly the most magical experience to try and wrap your head around. So with our magic backups, what we're calling that is, it just allows you to set up a wallet super simple. So when you open Envoy, you'll have two options. You can manage Passport, where you can connect, use Envoy as a watch-only wallet, which is the functionality that we've always had since we released Envoy. Or you can choose set up Envoy wallet. After you choose set up Envoy wallet, the app will ask you how you would like to connect to the internet. Do you want to do that over Tor for increased privacy, or do you want to do that with what we're calling better performance, which is with Tor switched off, but obviously will be a far more stable connection. After you tap continue there, you'll be asked how you want to create a wallet. Now, we've also got our more advanced users that want to elect to manage their own seed words. At this point, they can choose to do that, at which point they'll be either asked to import some seed words or to allow the app to generate some seed words and then show them to them, which again is the traditional way that you would set up a Bitcoin wallet. Or you can have the option to tap enable backups, which crucially here only applies to the Envoy wallet. Just want to clear that up so there's no confusion that these Envoy backups are just for your Envoy wallet and have no bearing on any connected passports at all. So the seed words will never ever leave your passport. So the features that I'm talking about now are just in relation to the Envoy mobile wallet. So once you tap enable magic backups, the final screen, or the fourth tap, is just literally tapping create magic backup. And on this screen, once you've got it in front of you, you'll have a beautiful animation that shows you how all of the information is stored, what goes where, what's encrypted. Well, essentially it's all encrypted, and what it's stored and how it's protected. And I'm going to cover that off in a second. So then you tap the fourth one, Envoy creates your wallet, and after a brief second, it's all encrypted, and sent off to your personal cloud, and your wallet is ready and you can transact. Literally in 15-20 seconds, you've got your own wallet. Job done. So how are we achieving that? So first and foremost, when you tap create wallet, as with any other mobile wallet, Envoy will securely generate a seed on device, and it will then encrypt that and send that to your iCloud keychain, which is Apple's end-to-end storage solution. So any passwords or secrets that are on your phone for any other apps, this is exactly the same method that we would store your Envoy private key. And then we would also create an encrypted file that contains any what we call wallet metadata. So things like any labels that you would subsequently add, any connected devices if you are a Passport user, any transaction labels and any account names. All of that sort of stuff gets encrypted by your seed words locally on your device. And then after it's been encrypted, it'll be sent off to the Foundation server with to be stored alongside a hash of your seed, which is used as the identifier. And crucially, we did this and stored it with a hash of your seed such that we didn't need to collect any personal information on you whatsoever. So we don't want to know where you are in the world. We don't want to know your name. We don't want to know how much Bitcoin you have, etc., etc. We've architected this purposefully, so that all Foundation has access to is an encrypted blob of data. We don't have access to your seed words, obviously, because that is encrypted and stored in your personal cloud. And I failed to mention that if you're a Google user, then that is sent to your Android Auto Backup, which is Google's version of the iCloud keychain, again, end-to-end encrypted and encrypted at rest. So there's a segregation of these secrets such that they both need to come together in terms of a recovery, so that once you've got hold of your seed, which is essentially just pulling that down from your cloud, i.e. just being logged into your iCloud keychain or to your Android Auto Backup, and everything just happens magically in the background, and Envoy is able to combine those two pieces of information such that if you were to switch to a new iPhone or to a new Android phone, all you need to do is make sure that you're signed in, download the Envoy app, tap two buttons and your wallet is recovered. All of your metadata is there, all your account names are there, transaction labels, account details, so the app looks like you never left. So that's where we get the magic name from, because you can do this in just a couple of taps, and everything happens automatically such that you can have that magic onboarding experience. And then when you do progress and you want to become a little bit more self-sovereign, and you maybe want to remove your dependence from Apple or Google, like I mentioned earlier, we do allow users to download their seed words. They can take those offline. They can store them any which way they want as well, so they don't have that sole dependence on the encryption that Apple or Google uses as well. So I hope I've done that justice, but please chime in, guys, if I've missed anything off.
Yeah, I think that's a great overview Q&A. I think if I was to do a TLDR on your summary, I would say that there's a couple great features for Magic Backups. One is you can get up and running in like 60 seconds. I actually did it with my mom yesterday, and it worked. And she was able to go through the entire flow herself. Get a self-custodial Bitcoin mobile wallet that's automatically backed up for her in about a minute. One of the main inspirations for this Magic Backups feature was from learning a lot more about the Canadian truckers and the movement to get Bitcoin donations into their hands. And so this is something that I think every Canadian trucker could have done. They could have set themselves up in about a minute with a self-custodied mobile wallet. Because it was too difficult, the solution that ended up occurring was to give them all paper wallets, which I think was actually not the best move. So number one here is the speed, about 60 seconds to get set up. Number two is that everything we're doing is end-to-end encrypted. So we're leveraging iCloud Keychain or Android Auto Backup, which is end-to-end encrypted. And then what our server gets is encrypted by your seed. So we don't even know what we're storing. And then three is the fact that there's no user accounts whatsoever. Most of the other solutions in the space that do something like this require that you either create an email and password, or that you share some details about, let's say, your Google account with the company. We really did not want to do that, right? Because we don't want to know anything about our users. And so I think this solution we engineered was pretty elegant. So, 60 seconds, super fast, all end-to-end encrypted, and no user accounts or any other kind of, personal data that you have to share.
Yeah, and the two things that I'll just kind of re-stress that Q&A hit on, but have been really the only major questions that we've run into so far with Magic Backups, is that they are completely and totally optional, totally voluntary. They're up to you. You do not have to opt into them. And for those of you who want to keep using your manual seed words, or maybe you have Passport and you want to use Key Manager for your seed phrase for Envoy, we absolutely have not forgotten that use case. And for those users who want to store their own seed word, we've actually put a lot of thought and effort into the actual seed word entry and verification flow, so that they're, I think, a lot simpler and cleaner than other approaches as well. So it's certainly not something where we've kind of forgotten about those of you who don't want to put in your reliance on Apple or Google. We very much still support that and have made that as easy as possible. But we understand that process of those seed words is daunting for those initial users. So we wanted that option of these Magic Backups to make it a very, very simple, seamless onboarding experience. So not only is the whole use of Magic Backups optional, but just to reiterate something the Q&A said again, because there was some confusion around this with the Ledger Recover stuff happening around the same time, is that the Envoy Magic Backups are only for the mobile hot wallet that's in Envoy and have nothing to do with Passport. We cannot export your seed from Passport to Envoy and use it in Magic Backups, and we don't offer that functionality. We never would, and our code is open source, so you can verify that can't happen. So it's very much something where it does not have anything to do with Passport. Passport still uses either your normal seed phrase backup or your encrypted Magic or your encrypted micro SD backups to store your cold storage seed and funds. So they're two separate things, and for two separate use cases. I think often for two separate users as well, and that I know that a lot of the people who are already Passport users are often more of the type who want to put no reliance on anyone else, but they want to be able to just use their own manual seed words. So definitely can still do that. I guess third thing to stress as well is just that this is end-to-end encrypted. So Foundation and Apple and Google never get any visibility into anything that you're doing with Magic Backups. You never see your seed, never see your the seed words, never see balance, anything like that. None of that comes with magic backups. And that's been a very specific focus for us because we are hugely aware of the need for privacy and the need for not introducing more trusted third parties into this kind of solution. So definitely something where from the ground up, there was a big focus there. I think that about covers Envoy. Any other kind of last second things that y'all want to throw in Q&A or Zach before we jump into the last question?
No, I think just to self-shill again, that there's a couple of videos walking through both the manual setup and the magic setup on a YouTube channel as well. So if you want to see how both of those work and what the benefits and use cases of taking either different option are, then go ahead and check those out as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've tried to make as much kind of content and resources around these big releases as possible to cover all of our bases, but I know there were still questions around that there. But for the last question I had for y'all, we've covered big news about Ledger. We've covered the big news with Passport, all the things that we've bundled in the latest update there. We've covered Envoy as a mobile wallet and magic backups. The last thing is really just that we just got back from the Bitcoin conference in Miami, and we were able to have about half of our team join us there. So for me, I just had an absolute blast. It was actually my first year jumping into the Bitcoin conference, so I hadn't had any exposure to it before. But I just have only positive things to say about the organizers. They did a fantastic job of actually working with us throughout the process of getting our booth set up and getting there, about selling Passport in their store. There was a lot of really good back and forth, and thankful for the organizers there. But also just so many fantastic conversations with like-minded Bitcoiners throughout. I mean, we must have talked to 10,000 people at least throughout the course of the 3 days of the conference. And that's always my favorite part, is really getting to hear from people of all walks of life who love Bitcoin, who want to better understand how to use it, how it grants freedom, what the tools are that exist for it. And we're going to have so many fantastic conversations. One that I highlighted on Twitter, and then I'm going to throw it to y'all for your thoughts on the conference, was that there was a 60-year-old woman who came over. She bought Passport with PayJoin, so she preserved her privacy and ours by paying with PayJoin on the spot with Bitcoin, and was absolutely badass. It's just awesome to see that it's not just kind of my generation jumping in and adopting Bitcoin, but there's people from all walks of life, all countries across the globe, all age ranges, that see the need for Bitcoin. They understand the freedom that it brings, and they're willing to learn the tools along the way. So it was awesome for me. I had a blast, but I'd love to hear more from you, Zach, especially. I know Q&A, unfortunately, you didn't get to join us there, so you may not have too much to add here. But Zach, what were your thoughts on how kind of the Bitcoin conference went in Miami?
I thought it was great. I thought it was much more focused on Bitcoin this year, which is always a plus. And couple of my favorite things were, one, being able to demo Passport and Envoy. I love doing those kinds of demos and just speaking with everyone who comes up to the booth. But two, that we got to sell in person for the first time, and that a large percentage of our sales were actually in Bitcoin as well. We had our own self-hosted BTC Pay point of sale system there on an iPad running, and we're able to take both on-chain and Lightning, and it was just awesome being able to see people use Bitcoin on our self-hosted infra to buy a Passport.
Yeah, I think, I don't have the exact numbers, but I think probably about 20%, 25% of people who bought Passport used Bitcoin while we were there, which was pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, well, it was definitely cool, and I'm glad that we finally have stock in person to be able to do these things, which have been fantastic at this conference and throughout the year. The other conferences we're attending, we're planning on doing the same thing. So, as I've harped on Twitter, but that's really the best way to buy a hardware wallet. You don't have to give a shipping address. You don't have to give out a credit card or anything like that. You can pay with cash, pay with Bitcoin, pay with Lightning, and get a hardware wallet over the counter with no details about you ever tied to that purchase, which is a huge piece of using a hardware wallet, is if you can, preserving your privacy so that there's no link there. Obviously, if you do purchase with us online, we protect that data immensely, and we also delete it as soon as we possibly can after shipping, so that we don't have any dependency on keeping that data safe long term. But it's definitely one of those things where buying at a conference is really the best way to do it. So I'd recommend, if you're going to be at another kind of one of the bigger conferences going on the rest of the year, shoot us a message. We'd be happy to chat with you on if we'll be there and be selling them in person. One quick update before we jump into a user question that we have on Telegram is just that because of what Zach mentioned, when this ledger recover stuff happened, we saw a massive rush to safety in free and open source software and hardware. And with that came a ton of people coming and jumping on the Passport train and appreciating the work that's gone into it and appreciating how it simplifies their Bitcoin journey. We sold out all of our inventory for 1 to 2 months over the span of like 36 hours. So with that, our aim for shipping out new passports is, I think, about 2 to 4 weeks now. Zach, feel free to correct me if I'm off there. But we're working hard to use the ramped up production that we already had in place to go ahead and ship out the orders that have come in the meantime.
Yeah, technically, I would say 3 to 5. I updated the website today, but should probably be about 3 weeks.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that anybody who's listening knows that we are out of stock, but working hard to get those. And we were already ramping up production before this, but obviously didn't expect such a crazy rush of sales. So good problem to have. Now, one quick question from Telegram, and I think we'll be wrapping up for today because I don't see any questions on Twitter. Is from Blockchain Boog, and he said, question: when using Key Manager, how do you generate an address to send Bitcoin to without uploading the seed to a mobile or warm wallet? Q&A, you want to answer this one? Dive into a little bit how that works, that we can connect Passport and connect seed phrases to, or connect Passport to wallets without exposing the private keys.
Yeah, definitely. So I think his question is more around sending directly to a child seed address without sort of having to connect that to Envoy or to whichever software wallet that is. So the short answer is right now you can't. You would need to connect that to a wallet software that is able to then generate the addresses for you. However, there's a couple of features that we've got in the relatively short-term pipeline for Passport in terms of ephemeral seeds and also in terms of an address list or an address explorer. So I don't see why we couldn't leverage both of these in a way that you could sort of temporarily load one of your child seeds as kind of the temporary master seed for the time that the device is switched on, and then leverage the address explorer if and when we do finally are able to implement that in a way that we're happy with. Then I think that would probably be the solution. Not making any hard and fast promises or being able to give any timelines here, but your solution, that would be the obvious solution that springs to my mind right now. But clearly we need to put some thought around how we would be able to do that, first and foremost in a secure way, but obviously in a way that fits with our design principles as well, such that we're not going to completely baffle people or have them send it to the wrong address or to the wrong seed as well. So we just want to put some careful thought to that. But we think that the use case that you mentioned is absolutely valid, and I don't see why it wouldn't be possible in the not too distant future.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one that I hadn't really considered, but being able to send to that, especially in really in any of the scenarios is helpful. So it'd be cool to do that. I think that the hard part is obviously Passport can't understand what addresses are used or not because it's an air gapped device. So it's hard to actually do the addresses on the device. But connecting it in an ephemeral way would be pretty interesting as well. And just one little note to add. So normally, if you're using Passport itself, Passport accounts, not the child seeds from Key Manager, you can connect Passport with mobile wallets or desktop wallets by exporting the public key, not the private key, so that you can derive addresses, view funds, etc., without exposing that. But like Q&A mentioned, you can't do that directly with the child seed and Key Manager because it's handled differently there. So that's definitely something interesting to explore, and I'm curious if ephemeral seeds can work with that specifically. That'd be pretty fun. So we'll definitely explore that. Any last thoughts here, Q&A or Zach, before we wrap up?
No, this was a real fun one, and great to give everybody listening a bit of an insight as to how crazy the last 3 to 4 weeks has been for us. Not that we're complaining, it's been a wild ride and doesn't show any signs of slowing down either. So looking forward to the future.
Same here. It's fun to talk about everything we're working on. Can't wait to share all our future things over the next few months and beyond.
Yeah, there was a nice subtle tease at the end of our Envoy blog post about kind of what this unlocks for us. So super excited. The ability to have a hot wallet just opens up so many doors to other Bitcoin tools and features that we can explore. So really excited to jump into that as well. And yeah, a lot more coming, a lot of fun stuff coming the rest of the year from our team. So thanks for jumping on Q&A. Thanks for jumping on, Zach. Good to chat with you again here, and good to cover all the crazy things that have been happening in the space. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks for jumping in for this episode of Journey to Sovereignty, and I hope you'll join us for our next live Twitter space every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT. Joining us live gives you a chance to listen in, participate, and get your questions answered on the spot. Follow us at Foundation DVCS on Twitter to keep up with the latest news, get notifications when we go live, and much more. See you at the next one, and thanks for joining us on the Journey to Sovereignty.